Hello, my name is Daniel Hernandez. I will be presenting the case study on the terms private placement memorandum, private placement offering, due diligence, term sheet, and certain regulations. First, we have private placement memorandum, or PPM. There are several definitions. For example, VC Experts, a research website for private investors, defines PPM as an offering circular for shares in a private placement. No particular form is prescribed. The idea is to disclose enough information to intrigue investors into performing due diligence and investing. But the venture capital marketplace says that the main purpose of BPM is to give the entrepreneur all potential risks for potential investors. So while VC experts say it's almost as if you're teasing investors that they have to go out and do the research, venture capital marketplace says no, give them all the information, all potential risks, so that way then they just have to make the simple decision of whether they want to invest or not. Next, PPMs do contain a lot of documentation. They have things such as business plans, objectives of the company, all relevant financial statements, information about the management and maybe personal biographies, and in-depth description of the organization. This is crucial. Because most of this information isn't public, it is key for management to disclose this information so private investors can make the decision if it's beneficial or not to invest their personal funds. Some say that PPM is similar to a business plan, which it is. There are several overlaps with a company's plan. Both include actual and projected financial statements and explanations about management and operation. The difference, according to Growth Inc., a website online, is that a business plan goes into greater depth about market research, strategy, and tactics. A business plan cannot contain an offering or an attempt to raise capital, which is reserved for PPM. There are several reasons for PPM. First is that it creates an as protection for the company. This would be to the company outlining all potential risks and information about the company, a sort of disclosure so if there is a negative or unfortunate turn for the company, no private investor can come for retribution as all known information has been clearly given. Furthermore, it adds a professional demeanor to the company. Having a great PPM gives the company credibility. It is legally permitted by Regulation D in the Securities Act of 1933 and also by Rule 144A convertible transactions and Regulation S transactions to raise capital by means of PPM. All in all, PPM are a great way for private firms to raise capital with debt. It is similar to all of a prospectus for public companies. It illustrates all the same information and gives the option for investors to do their due diligence to see if they would like to invest. It's highly necessary information with a special focus on risks to help secure the company in case of bankruptcy and possible recourse. While it is lengthy, time-consuming, and possibly expensive, it is a great foundation for companies as it requires forecasts and a business plan. A private placement offering, or PPO, is the raising of capital with private equity among a small number of sophisticated investors. Their offerings do not qualify as a public sale of securities, thus it does not have to be registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC. Also, a PPO sale does not have to be reported the usual requirements. A PPO sale is a great way to raise money without having to issue a lengthy and stressful initial public offering, or IPO. According to Inc., another online investments website, there are several advantages to PPOs when compared to IPOs and public trading. They cite that PPOs do not need help from brokers or underwriters, therefore they are less expensive and a lot quicker to sell and raise funds. Furthermore, they are traditionally safe and more accessible to risky ventures and companies that are just starting up. A gigantic benefit is that owners of the business can choose the investor so that they can choose someone who is like-minded with identical goals and visions. Companies are able to keep their private status and are therefore more confidential transactions. There are disadvantages though. The disadvantages are that owners are looking for particular investors that may be hard to find or that they may just not exist. Secondly, investors may only have limited funds, and therefore they cannot raise the exact amount they want. Inc. goes on to say that privately placed securities are tremendously undersold, and investors usually get a very good deal, while owners are never fully paid the capital that it is worth. Thus, companies and owners will have to sell more equity to compensate for that amount that they did not raise. This would mean giving a larger portion of your company away. At first, the SEC heavily regulated PPO transactions. They had such regulations as having only a limited number of investors, owners must have established criteria that investors must adhere to, and lastly, these offerings could not be made to sophisticated lenders who were competent and knowledgeable to look up necessary information and make a sound decision. Also, these private sales were very difficult to resell and had to meet certain circumstances, and then the sales could finally go through. Most of these regulations, however, were removed in 1992. So, private placement offerings are a great way to raise capital in a private setting if one does not want to raise purely on debt. Owners have the ability to choose sophisticated investors who think as they do and therefore are more lenient because they perhaps see the bigger picture. This could be compared to an IPO, which takes a lot of work and time to create, and then you have investors who want quick results. PPOs are less regulated now and are great for investors who want some privacy. There are a lot of different forms of due diligence. They range from mergers, acquisition, purchases, operations, commercial, and even IT. It is defined as the investigation by a business or a person before signing any type of contract to assure that they are completely informed about every word of the contract. To go further in depth, it describes the responsibility to exceed care in any form of transaction. This way, you ensure that you are fully aware of any risks and therefore can be well briefed in relevant material in order to make an educated decision. What does that all mean? It's as simple as just doing your homework before making a decision. The purpose of due diligence is conducted to endorse the deal of a business transaction, to become knowledgeable of possible deal breakers, and try to avoid potentially undesirable transactions. Also, it's to familiarize oneself with all goods involved, prices, the markets you are entering, the upside to possible the transaction, and finally, to ensure that all verifications and compliances have been met. Due diligence is conducted by investors, both lead and alternative, corporate staff, attorneys, accountants, investment bankers, loan officers, and any relatable professionals that have obligations when dealing with any independent transaction. There are certain negatives for due diligence. That is, a target company could possibly walk away from a transaction if the purchasing company overdoes their due diligence and offends them. Furthermore, doing too much can create an information overload effect and can actually paralyze the company from not being able to make a decision. While there is no answer of how much due diligence is needed to make a decision, it is important to know that too much information can be bad. Concluding, due diligence is crucial when making a decision. We must be well-informed and sophisticated investors, able to make a knowledgeable decision that we hope will prove to be a deal in the future. As discussed by Bloomberg, a term sheet is a document prepared by capitalists wanting to raise funds or create a venture that they set forth key components that deal with the proposed investment. Most of these venture capitalists focus solely on the fiscal and numerical value of the transaction, however, which could prove costly. The purpose of a term sheet is the creation of back and forth negotiations that is the foundation to make sure that all parties that are involved in the transaction are in agreement of the major clauses of the deal. Term sheets are conditional offers, and in-depth due diligence is required to know all the details about the terms of the contract. Then comes negotiation in regards to employment, options, registration, shareholders, and other such things. In all, a term sheet is pretty much a summary that makes negotiations start for both sides. That way, they can discuss important things in a document. Securities law is loosely defined by a loan of sorts that you give to a venture capitalist and are promised to get more money back than you had invested without any such effort. These do need to be registered with local state governments and the SEC, which can be avoided with the securities law with Rule 504 for $1 million or less invested. One must comply and can give funds without harsh regulations, but if they are not met, investors may come back against you and try to get the money back from you, which can potentially open you to personal liabilities and claims. So a person wanting to raise these funds have to be dead sure and consult with an attorney. That way they do not have these detrimental errors to their business. Thank you.